The air inside the Buriram pit garage is thick with a tension you could cut with a carbon fiber winglet. Engineers in Yamaha Blue stand motionless, their eyes glued to telemetry screens that tell a story of desperate survival. Outside, on the scorching tarmac of Thailand, a sound echoes that shouldn't exist, a deep, guttural roar that signals the end of a 20-year dynasty. For 2 decades, Yamaha was the church of the inline-4 engine, a philosophy of silk and speed that brought 8 world titles and redefined racing grace. But today, that legacy is being burned to the ground. Standing in the center of this storm is the most aggressive man to ever sit on a motorcycle, Toprak Razgatlıoğlu. He wasn't hired to win races, he was hired to tame a monster that Yamaha's own stars have called wild and unrideable. The stakes couldn't be higher. If this radical V4 project fails here in the heat of Buriram, it won't just be a technical setback. It will be the death of Yamaha's sporting credibility and the potential end of Toprak's MotoGP dream before he even reaches the first grid of 2026. The paddock is holding its breath. No one expected what was about to unfold next, and it would change everything for him, his team, and the entire trajectory of the season. The Sepang scar when the dream met reality. But to understand the desperation in Buriram, we have to go back to the humid nightmare of the Sepang shakedown just weeks prior. Yamaha had arrived in Malaysia with the weight of the world on their shoulders. The revolutionary V4 prototype was finally public and the hype was staggering. Fans expected a Ducati killer. What they got was a garage full of smoke and broken parts. Behind the scenes, the situation was even more dire than the media realized. Both Fabio Quartararo and Toprak had literally broken engines during the first day of testing. The raw power of the new V4 configuration was proving too much for the cooling systems and the internal components to handle. Inside the garage, whispers began spreading that the project was months behind schedule. Toprak, the Superbike King known for his stoppy braking and fearless entry speeds, looked like a passenger. He was 18th on the timesheets, nearly 2 seconds off the pace, and his face told the story of a man who realized he might have made a catastrophic mistake. He was struggling to adapt to the Michelin tires, claiming the tire spin just doesn't stop. The bike was a bull that refused to be tamed, and the Turkish star was losing his famous motivation. Yamaha engineers didn't just need a fix, they needed a miracle. And they had exactly 10 days before the next test to find it. The Buriram transformation, the secret upgrades. Yamaha's response to the Sepang disaster was nothing short of a technical war footing. Under the leadership of technical director Max Bartolini, the team worked night and day, abandoning the traditional slow Japanese development pace for a ruthless European-style emergency protocol. They knew that Buriram, with its brutal stop-go nature and blistering heat, would either validate their new direction or destroy it entirely. The Buriram package wasn't just a minor adjustment, it was a total recalibration of the bike's soul. Engineers focused on a radical new engine mapping system designed to smooth out the V4's violent torque delivery. They revised the aero setup, adding futuristic winglet concepts to keep the front wheel on the ground during the massive acceleration bursts that the V4 provides. But the real turning point happened away from the cameras, in a series of private meetings between Toprak and the technical crew. Toprak demanded a bike that allowed him to use his stop-style braking, a trait the early V4 prototype had almost completely neutralized. He spent hours detailing the lack of front-end feel, telling technicians that if he couldn't trust the front, he couldn't be Toprak. The bike was ready and the rider was focused. But as Toprak rolled out of the garage for the first session in Thailand, a new problem emerged that no one saw coming. The man and the machine, Toprak's technical war. The heat in Thailand was pushing the hardware to its absolute limit, but Toprak was pushing even harder. He began performing stress tests that defied the laws of prototype physics. While veteran riders like Jack Miller provided steady, reliable data, Toprak was providing hypersensitive feedback that was actually breaking the engineer's simulations. He wasn't just riding, he was feeling every micro-vibration of the throttle and every ounce of traction loss in the mid-corner. According to insiders, the telemetry was starting to show something impossible. Toprak was entering corners at angles and speeds that the computer said should result in a certain crash. Yet the Turk was staying upright, his body language shifting from frustration to a predatory focus. He was fighting the V4's tendency to push wide, forcing the machine to obey his will. Technical analysis showed that the new aero design was finally providing the downforce needed to stabilize the bike under hard braking, his specialty. But even as the lap times began to drop, the pressure from the paddock was mounting. Rival teams like Ducati and KTM weren't just watching, they were sending scouts to the edge of the track to film Toprak's lines. They realized that Yamaha hadn't just built a new engine, they had found a rider who could make a prototype do things it wasn't designed to do. However, the twist that followed would change the championship narrative entirely. The paddock whispers a power shift at Yamaha. As the Buriram test entered its final hours, a strange atmosphere settled over the Yamaha camp. It wasn't just about the V4 anymore, It was about a shifting hierarchy within the manufacturer itself. While the factory team with Fabio Quartararo struggled with reliability issues, Toprak, the rookie on the Pramac satellite squad, was suddenly the one delivering the most consistent purple sectors. Paddock whispers suggested a deeper tension behind closed doors. Was Toprak's stop-go riding style actually better suited for the V4 than the corner speed philosophy that had defined Yamaha for decades? Some mechanics claimed that something felt off in the data sharing between the two garages. There were reports of heated arguments regarding which rider should lead the development direction. Toprak's ability to find traction where others found none was making the factory veterans look slow. He was breaking the data, proving that the V4 didn't need to be smooth, it needed to be exploited. Rumors began to surface that Toprak had unlocked a secret in the electronics, a specific way of managing engine braking that allowed him to dive bomb into corners with a level of stability that had vanished since the inline-4 era. If the data was right, Toprak hadn't just fixed the bike, he had turned it into a weapon that could threaten the entire grid. But what the paddock discovered next shocked everyone. The aftermath, the birth of a new era. The final run at Buriram was a cinematic display of raw determination. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the Thailand circuit, Toprak Razgatlioglu unleashed a lap that silenced every critic in the pit lane. He didn't just beat his Sepang time, he obliterated the psychological barrier that had been holding Yamaha back. The staggering pace showed that the V4 project was no longer a gamble, it was a revolution. Yamaha had finally found the balance between the high power of the V4 configuration and the rider-friendly controls that Toprak required. The era of the inline-4, the engine of Rossi and Lorenzo, is officially over. In its place is a louder, more violent, and far more dangerous machine. 2026 is no longer a learning year for the Turkish star or for the Awada-based manufacturer. It is a declaration of war against European dominance. The Kando feeling, that deep satisfaction of exceptional performance, has returned to the Japanese camp. As Toprak rolled back into the pits, his team didn't just cheer, they looked relieved. They had survived the fire of Sepang and the heat of Buriram to emerge with a weapon capable of shaking the very foundations of MotoGP. The transition is complete and the racing world is now on notice. The era of the inline-4 is history. The era of Toprak and the V4 has just begun.